What's up, everyone? We are diving back into the multiverse today for another epic. What if Naruto was exiled and claimed harem with Hinata, Temari, Yugito Kagura Mei Terumi Karui Yugito Samui Yugao Kuranai Anko Tayuya Fu Temari, Part 1. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. I used to go by the name of Naruto Uzumaki instead until I was told of my heritage. All my life I had believed that I had been abandoned by my parents because of what I hold, so you can imagine my surprise when I learned my father was Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, also known as the Konoha no Karui Senko Konoha's Yellow Flash, the very same man who sealed the Kyuubi no Yoko in my gut. For a long time I was pissed at my gather for the burden being placed on my life. On some level one feel like he trusted me with the task of keeping the Kyuubi in control, believing I could tame its power, but there are some times where I wish I had never entrusted with the task. My mother was Uzumaki Kushina, Red Death of Konoha, from Uzushiogakure no Sato, village hidden among the whirling tides. They say she was beautiful, a redhead with a tomboyish attitude similar to how I used to be, and she was also a kunoichi of the Whirlpool country which was destroyed at the beginning of the Third Great Shinobi War. My mother was the only known survivor as there was no proof anyone else had survived. The only problem is that she is assumed to be dead, meaning she either abandoned me at the hands of the village or she passed on but went missing. I had learned about my heritage after I brought back Tsunade to be Hokage. Jiraiya had decided it was time that I should know who I really was. I was so happy to find out I actually belonged to people that loved me and didn't abandon me like I had thought all these years. I had then learned I had a special bloodline called the Omni Elemental. This allows me to use all elements as if they were my primary element, and with me being a jutsu lover, I couldn't wait to learn all the possible jutsu out there and even create some along the way. This bloodline was apparently from the Namikaze side of the family. The Uzumaki side was a mystery as my mother was a bit secretive about her past as it was a painful issue to her when speaking to others about it. I am now 17 years of age. 4 years ago I was banished from my home village Konohagakure no Sato, village hidden in the leaves, all because of the foolish council thinking they know what's good for their village. I was banished for the sole reason of not completing a mission I wasn't even the leader of, the mission where I had to bring my ex-teammate, Sasuke Uchiha, back to the village, all because he left in order to gain more power. Of course the council in their infinite wisdom decided that he was too valuable to let to go and sent Shikamaru Nara, Kiba Inuzuka and his partner Akamaru Choji Akamichi and Neji Hyuga. All of us pursued Sasuke through the forest because he had teamed up with the Sound 4. Eventually the group broke as they started to have one-on-one fights with the Sound 4 and then their fifth member, Kimimaro. Choji and Neji both ended up near death after defeating their opponents, Jirobo and Kitamaru. Kiba and Akamaru were nearly killed by Sakin and Ukin, but were saved by the timely intervention of Konkuro. This situation was repeated with Shikamaru being saved by Temari from Tayuya. I then engaged Kimimaro in battle for a while but was not a match for him. Rock Lee saved him in order for me to continue pursuing Sasuke. Gaara, in turn, saved Rock Lee, and both were then saved by Kimimaro's succumbing to disease. When I faced off with Sasuke, the battle ended in Sasuke's favor, but he chose not kill me. In the end, the mission was a failure, as Sasuke successfully joined up with Orochimaru. I was so weak back then I felt ashamed. After that mission I made the decision that I and he were enemies. The next time I saw him, only one of us would walk away. I now have many enemies despite being at the young age of 17, the Akatsuki who are after me for the power of the Kyuubi for their own uses, Orochimaru, who most likely wants the Kyuubi's power himself, but honestly I just want to kill him for killing the Sandaime Hokage, the only person to ever be nice to be as a kid, and my ex-teammate, Uchiha Sasuke. Not long after being released from the hospital I was called up to the council chambers that resided within the Hokage Tower. I still remember everything, even to this day. Obviously I wouldn't let the village burn just because of my anger at the elders, but for the first time in my life I just wanted them to feel fear, believing that I wouldn't help them. The only reason I ever would is because of Tsunade and Jiraiya as well as my precious people. After that, I had gone home to pack up all of my stuff along with scrolls on my bloodline and heritage. Before I could leave, however, Jiraiya had come to my apartment to give me a scroll from my father that he told me to open when I wanted to get really strong, and Tsunade soon came around with a couple scrolls on medical jutsu, knowing that I would need to be able to heal myself despite the Kyuubi healing abilities. After getting a biggest hug I ever thought possible from Tsunade, I had said goodbye to the two senin. I left my apartment, and eventually the village, to live my life only Kami knows where. After reading up more about my bloodline, I soon came to the point where it is possible to combine elements to create a sub-element so that I can recreate Mokuden, Hyoten, and many more. With this, I just knew it would help me to become extremely strong. In the first few months, I eventually came into a life and death situation when all of a sudden I blacked out. When I had woken up, I felt stronger than I ever could feel. As I looked around, I had noticed the air looked like an explosion rocked the place, until I saw a puddle where I noticed my eyes had turned a grayish-purple iris and sclera with circular ripples in it. After some investigating, I learned that the eyes were a bloodline, a dojutsu that was unable to shut off like the Sharingan and Byakugan. I soon learned that people viewed it as nothing but a myth, that the only person to have had the eyes was the Rakudo Sennin. Knowing that, it made me feel special for the first time in my life. It was also with this dojutsu that I seemed to gain knowledge in my dreams about jutsu only for the Rinnegan, as it was called, and that the reason for my omni-elemental bloodline was because the Namakazes were derived from the Rakudo Sennin, just like the Uchiha and Senju. However, the family tree had been lost for generations. It wasn't until about 5 months later, where I was on the way to Kumogakure to train more in my Raiden element and perhaps even my Rantan element, which I had read up on and learned that holders of the particular sub-element reside in Kumo as well as 2 fellow Jinchuriki. Of course, I gained this information through some spies had recruited. This was also the same time I met my first Kumo shinobi, who would become friends with me as well as allies, and Iwagakure shinobi, who would become my enemy, father like son. It was also the day that something amazing happened. After that, they took me to the Raikage, where explained everything that had happened to me to him ever since I was banished, as well as the Zanpakuto. I was still in shock that I was part Shinigami, but couldn't wait until I found others like me. I soon learned a lot of techniques from my Zanpakuto, which are called Hado, which are the destructive spells, my favorite, and Bakudo, the more defensive spells, very helpful. They were classed as Kido, which is Demon Way. After the Raikage found out who I was, he decided that he would help train me, which made the 4 Kumo shinobi to look on in shock, which I had seen too many times lately. When I asked why, he simply told me that when I became a legend, that to mention he had trained me, which I had to admit, wasn't a bad deal. So from that day on, I learned from the Raikage and sometimes his brother, who called himself Killer B, the Hachibi no Kyogyu Jinchuriki. They taught me a lot about Raiden, to the point where I could use it from any part of my body like it was nothing. I also learned some Rantan, not a lot, but enough to get me by. I stayed there for 6 months, integrating with their culture and getting to know everybody. I started seeing the Raikage and Killer B as 2 crazy older brothers. While I became closer to Yugito, Samui and Karui, I knew they were trying for my affection, but at the time I was unable to give it to them. Killer B had told me about an island where he learned to control the Hachibi's chakra and offered to take me. Despite how much I felt I needed to, I knew I couldn't at the time, so I told him I would when I was ready, seeing as I felt I was nowhere near strong enough yet. When I eventually had to leave, I said goodbye to everyone, except for the 3 girls. Nope, but I gave them each one hell of a kiss that they would remember for a while. My next destination was Kurigakure to learn about Suiten Jutsu, seeing as that is where they specialize in that element. While there, I had met Mei Terumi the Sei, yet commanding Mizukage, and had found she was quite flirtatious with me, something I didn't mind considering her beauty. However, despite how much I wanted to, I had told her nothing could happen, yet, while she was disappointed, she understood clearly. That didn't stop her from leaving me with something to remember. Soon after that, I ended up in Sunagakure, where I followed up on futon manipulations, since I knew all masters of the elements hailed from the great village. I progressed well in the art thanks to Gaara and Temari, who had felt like they owed the blonde young man for saving Gaara from the darkness. At some point during the 3rd year of my banishment, I finally opened the scroll Jiraiya had given me before I left, and what do I find within it? The entire Ika Ika Collector's Edition, as well as something else my father left behind. Hiraishin no Jutsu, the very thing that made my father who he was now all mine. I also started learning from Tsunade's medical scrolls and had to admit they helped. I soon found my partner in crime, as well as one of my lovers. Instead of being in a relationship, we were what you could say, friends with benefits, something we both were okay with considering our life at that moment. This person was the beautiful Kagura Ankai. Her emerald eyes and crimson hair always seemed to sway in mischief. She wore a black battle kimono that was slightly altered. It was altered in a way that it was very revealing. Yet to underestimate her would be a great disadvantage. She was carrying in her hand a wicked-looking demon scythe, Beni Akadokiyami, Crimson Moonless Dawn. The scythe had a bone-like handle in black up to 5 feet, with a flat metal base for it to stand. At the top of the scythe where the blade is connected there is what looks like an emblem of a silver skull with ruby red eyes. Whereas the curved blade that is connected is black with red along the edges making it looks like blood. The scythe to my shock was actually a Zanpakuto, the first other person have met who was part Shinigami. Apparently her Zanpakuto had explained it all to her. It seemed for some reason it was always in its Shikai form. Ryujin Jaka had told me that it was either because it was too powerful or she didn't have enough control, or maybe both. The advantage was that it never got in the way, unlike mine, which would make me walk around with a sword on fire 24/7. When she uses her Zanpakuto, it tends to increase her battle lust, which doesn't concern Kagura at all since she loves battle. With Beni Akadokiyami, Kagura can unleash some destructive techniques that could possibly rival me. Her techniques though tend to relate with the moon. Her expertise with her Zanpakuto had earned her the name Shujuhi Kiho, Scarlet Witch, because of her techniques and her crazy lust for battle. I had met her close to Kurigakure where she thought I was a bounty hunter. Long story short, we fought, I won, she joined me, and we eventually had hot steamy say. All jokes aside, she is the only person to come close to killing me aside from the Raikage. On the 4th year of by banishment I had learnt that Gaara had been kidnapped by Akatsuki but eventually rescued and brought back to life thanks to Konoha. I couldn't believe I didn't even know he had been kidnapped until it was way too late. I felt like the worst friend. What I did know was that if Konoha hadn't been able to save him then Akatsuki would be wiped off the map. It was also during the 4th year that I was traveling past a Megakure when I was confronted by an Akatsuki member. However, this one was different, and the fact that she was female was a big starter as everyone I had met or known about were male. Her name was Konan. She was a truly beautiful woman who held up a cold expression to hide her true feelings, but against someone who had led a harsh life I could easily see it through her eyes, the pain, loss, hurt and regret. We had fought obviously. I kept my eyes hidden so that no Akatsuki member would know about them should they know of them, which would make them my trump card so to speak. I eventually beat her and spared her. Ever since that day we had met up on occasion where we would share information about many things. It was one of these times we fell for each other. At one of the meetings we ended up in a makeout session on a field crowded by trees. I don't know how it happened but I didn't complain. We started to open up a lot more as well. She told me everything about herself along with me doing the same. We eventually became lovers. At first I wasn't so sure about it, but after talking about how I needed to reform my clans as I was the last one, we decided to take the next step. It wasn't long after that I had finally learned the Hiraishin. Once I did, however, I met up with everyone important to me that I met up and gave them a special 3-prong kunai in case they ever got in trouble, which brings us to the present, where I felt a pull on my mind indicating a kunai had been used. Normal Pav. Turning to Kagura he said, I've got to go. Hiraishin pull, someone must be in danger. When you can feel my chakra, follow it as fast as possible. He said before giving her a full-blown kiss which she gladly returned. I'll be there, she said with a flirtatious smile. A second later he was gone. Hai no Kuni, the land of fire. Border. Yugito ni had never been in such trouble before. All she was supposed to do was be on a mission to an outpost within a town to drop off a package, and that was that. Now though she was thinking something else was going on. And that something was Akatsuki. In front of the blonde-haired woman were the immortal zombie brothers Kakuzu and Hidan, and she was in major trouble of actually losing. Well, that was until teams from Konoha had appeared. Apparently they were after the same Akatsuki members. From she had heard the 2 Akatsuki had killed someone called Asuma, one of the team's senseis. Yugito had introduced herself as the Nibi no Bakeniko Jinchuriki, which made sense to them with seeing her fighting these two. And it was then they started fighting. Even she knew that was foolish. From her information on them, the teams sent were formed out of Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Choji Akamichi with Kakashi Hatake as the leader. The second team was formed out of Sakura Haruno, someone called Yamato, Kurenai Yuhi, and someone called Sai. However, neither team was getting far. They had seriously underestimated their opponents as they didn't realize just how powerful this Kakuzu was. They had found out he had 5 hearts, which was truly something they didn't expect, along with the fact he could use all the elements from some masked creatures. Their other opponent Hidan was the hardest as he was, invincible literally. However, Shikamaru had taken somewhere else to do battle as he felt it had to be him. When Yamato, Kurenai, Sakura and Sai had gotten there, they had sent Sai and Sakura off to help with Shikamaru, as Sakura's medical ninjutsu and Sai's aerial jutsu could be very helpful. Up to now they had killed Kakuzu twice, meaning he had the hearts left. Kakashi had killed one using Reikiri and the other one was killed by Hidan, who had been tricked by Shikamaru and ended up using Kakuzu's blood in his ritual sacrifice, thinking it was Shikamaru's. Kakuzu's remaining 2 masks had merged with Kakuzu's back. These masks were blue for Futon and red for Kaden, a bad combination. Kakashi and his team along with Kurenai and Yamato were exhausted, and they knew if some miracle didn't happen they may never make it out in one piece. "We need a miracle," muttered Kurenai as she surveyed the area and seen it looked like a great war had happened with all the craters and trees that had been reduced to stumps now. "I know, but we have to everything in our power to stop this guy," Kakashi replied as he too was looking around seeing if there was anything they could use. "I can see why this guy is part of the Akatsuki," said Yamato as he had run out of chakra to use any of his Mokuden jutsus that may make a difference. Ino and Choji were practically exhausted and couldn't do any more jutsu. Ino's were ineffective as she needed the opponent to stay still, and Choji couldn't get close enough without a jutsu shoved in his face. Kakuzu looked at the in amusement, knowing they were fucked. He was going to enjoy taking Kakashi's heart for his own and maybe Mokuden user or the Genjutsu mistress. Yugito, who had been watching by the side the entire time, still exhausted, realized it was now or never. "I think I got just what you need," she said, gaining their attention as she pulled out an Hiraishin kunai. "I hope he doesn't mind seeing these guys so soon." As soon as Kakashi saw the kunai, his mind almost blew, not understanding how this woman could have that kunai, seeing as only one other person could ever use it, which hopefully meant one thing. "Hiraishin, how do you have that?" Kurenai asked, shocked. Yugito just chuckled. "Let's just say, you'll be surprised." Once she said that she chucked the kunai as hard as she could in between herself and the Konoha nins, where a crimson flash blinded them. As soon as the flash vanished, the Konoha team were in shock at seeing someone they hadn't expected in a long time. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze was back. He now looked like an 18-year-old young man. He stood at an impressive height of 6 feet. 2, he had blonde spiky hair with black highlights that stood up all over the place that flown down past his shoulder blades, much like Madara Uchiha's hairstyle looked like. His face was unblemished, not as much as a spot of dust on his tan face. His Rinnegan eyes were on show for all to see. They still displayed some warmth in them, but not as much as they used to. On his left ear he had an earring of what looked like a phoenix that dangled slightly on a very short chain. His face was set into a blank stare, as if he was staring at nothing at all. He wore steel-toed black combat boot along with a pair of baggy black cargo pants with various extra pockets, a shuriken and kunai holster strapped to each leg due to becoming ambidextrous. He also had a utility belt with several pouches on it along with scrolls for easier use. He wore a normal black t-shirt that had an upturned collar covering his neck. On top of that he wore a black sleeveless trench coat with crimson fire licking the bottom, much like his father's own trench coat. Due to having no sleeves on it, his t-shirt covered up his biceps only. However, he did wear a pair of fingerless gloves which seemed perfect for fighting as they had metal plating fitted in. On the back of the trench he had the kanji for Shinku Senko, Crimson Flash, in gold stitching vertically. The trench coat's collar stood up covering his neck. Around his neck was also a beautiful silver chain necklace where it held a replica of a phoenix along with another beautiful necklace he had received from Tsunade Senju. And last but not least, Ryujin Jaka strapped to his left side in his utility belt, showing off its beauty while also being perfectly placed for a quick draw. Looking to his left, Naruto saw a panting Yugito. Yugito, what's going on? He questioned. Yugito looked towards Kakuzu where Naruto followed her line of vision, only narrow his eyes. Akatsuki came after me. I was almost captured when those Konoha shinobi. She paused, pointing over to Kakashi and the gang where Naruto got his first look at them in over 4 years, and gave them a nod in acknowledgement and showing no bad blood between them. They sent some of their shinobi after the other Akatsuki member called Hidan, but this guy takes the piss. She said before she went on to explain everything that had happened up until he appeared. So, gotta kill him 3 more times, huh? He said as if it was no trouble. I'll give it a go. Kakashi was still looking at Naruto in wonder. Over the years, information of Naruto appeared in the bingo book, which he along with every Jonin had a copy of and practically knew all about his bloodline, the Rinnegan, the same one that was meant to be a myth. When he read it, some part of him thought it was just a lie to gain attention, but seeing it now, was a whole other situation. He could practically the power. Well, there's you, Miracle Kurenai. He said with an eye smile. You think Naruto can really beat this guy? I mean, all of us had trouble. Ino asked, unsure. While she was sure Naruto had become strong, she didn't know just how strong he is. Kurenai said nothing, just pulled a bingo book out of her pocket, flipped some pages and gave it to Ino so her and Choji could read it. Naruto turned back to Yugito and told her. Stay with Kakashi and the other, this may get destructive. He said with a smirk, making her sigh and shake her head before doing as he said. Naruto walked towards Kakuzu with a look that could certainly kill, as his Rinnegan seemed to penetrate his very being. Kakuzu shivered, it was like he could feel his death before him. Kakuzu just smirked. If you think you can defeat me, you truly are mistaken, just like the Konoha shinobi Hidan killed. He said with a laugh. Naruto frowned at that, since he hadn't heard someone had gotten killed. Who? Asuma Sarutobi, I believe his name was. He said, making Naruto sharpen his eyes while trying to control his anger. You bastard, now I have more than one reason to kill. I'll make sure you never leave here alive. He said, voice full of anger. Kakuzu grunted, showing he didn't care about killing Asuma. He was a worthy bounty. He said, angering Naruto more. Naruto grit his teeth together at hearing that. That's all human life is to you. Bounty. You people disgust me. Well, little Jinchuriki, what do you plan on doing? Naruto chuckled before holding his right hand up. I plan on showing you what it's like to feel true pain. Shinra Tensei. The ground in front of him was literally ripped up, breaking away as if some powerful force was blowing the area away. A second later, Kakuzu was picked up off his feet as he went sailing back through a couple trees before stopping. Sidelines. The group looked on in shock at the power of the jutsu. Looking at the result, they saw what looked like a half-pipe that was sent at where Kakuzu was stood, which was now a crater. How the hell did he do that? Asked Ino. That was the 6th element. Answered Yamato vaguely. 6th? Questioned Choji. Yes, while you and the others know the primary 5, there is also a 6th called gravity. No one really knows how to control it, but it seems the Rinnegan allows that possibility. Answered Kurenai as she marveled at the power. Battle. Kakuzu was in pain. More pain than he thought possible. He wasn't expecting such an attack from the Jinchuriki, and now he paid for it by underestimating him, even though he had that dojutsu. Standing back up with his arms still extending by his black thread, which made them dangle down, reattaching them to make them the size of normal hands, he went through hand seals as the red and blue masks' mouths opened up. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. Fire release. Great fireball technique. The red mask then shot out a huge fireball. Futon. Rinkuden. Wind release. Drilling air bullet. The blue mask shot a compressed ball of air at the fireball. Both jutsus combined, creating a ball of fire with intensity of that of the sun soaring at Naruto, who had his eyes closed. The fireball was still raging towards him. He could feel the heat getting closer, his blood pumping, and despite himself his grinned. He had been charging up chakra to use a jutsu he hadn't properly tested yet, but now was a good time as any to stop that fireball. Water was out of the question, as it would evaporate, wood would burn, whined he may as well kill himself, there was no other jutsu except. Naruto snapped his eyes open and held out both of his hands and shouted. Fujutsu Kyuin. As soon as the fireball made contact, instead of an explosion, it hit a carrier that formed around Naruto before it started to be soused into the barriers at the points of Naruto's hands. A minute later and the fireball had been absorbed. Sorry Kakuzu, but jutsu don't work on me. Sidelines. Holy shit. He just absorbed the freaking jutsu. Ino exclaimed, amazed at the jutsu. It appears as if that is one of the abilities of the Rinnegan, truly an amazing dojutsu. Responded Kakashi. Ha. And to think everyone in the village thought that the Sharingan was the greatest, can you imagine if he ever turned on Konoha for revenge? Mused Choji. We would have the worst possible enemy. Deduced Kurenai. She had always held respect for Naruto even if she didn't admit it, and right now she was a little turned on at seeing him fight with such power. After all, power attracts. Has anyone noticed Naruto has not moved at all since the battle started? Yamato stated. Everyone looked down and sure enough, no sign of him moving. Amazing. Ino exclaimed as she felt horny herself seeing someone so powerful and hot fight, especially with it being Naruto. She had never admitted it before, but she had always found him cute when they were younger, and seeing him now brought out all those emotions. With Shikamaru. Shikamaru had just wrapped a couple dozen explosive tags around Hidan with his shadows stopping him from moving. Now Hidan was hovering over a giant hole that went down for ages. The explosive tags were all connected to the trees around him, and for once in his life he felt fear run through his system as he knew he could actually die, or be unable to be put back together again should he collapse in the hole in pieces. What's going on? When did you do this? Hidan yelled as he indicated to the giant hole below him. I just set up this trap beforehand here. That's all. Shikamaru informed him as he was bent slightly panting. This guy, he wasn't just separating us two without thinking. He did it to lure me here. If that's true, he planned it up to here. Shikamaru then bent down to pick up a fallen pack of cigarettes. If you curse someone, you dig your own too. He pulled out a cigarette and put it in his mouth. You killed my sensei by curse. He then lit the cigarette. Don't think you can just merrily go your own way. Hidan glared at the lazy Nara so hard you would think he would set a flame. That's your grave. Kukuku, I won't die even if my body is scattered and I only have a head. I'll climb out of here and rip out your throat. Shikamaru took a smoke of the cigarette before taking it out. This forest is special even within the fire country. Only our clan is allowed to set foot in here, no one else will come. Our clan will keep an eye on you forever. As he said that, deer were coming out of the tree line all over the place. Shikamaru then felt a hand grasp his shoulder lightly. Looking over his shoulder, he saw the spectral figure of Asuma Sensei stood there with a proud smile on his face. You did good, Shikamaru. Yeah. The spectral Asuma then pulled out his cigarettes pack before pulling out a single cigarettes and putting in his mouth. Shikamaru pulled out his lighter and lit it for one last time. My will of fire, I entrust it to you. Those words echoed through Shikamaru's mind as if being told them. Goodbye, Sensei, he said before he flicked the lighter at the bound-up figure of Hidan. The lighter then touched the first explosive tag, causing a chain reaction which caused a massive blast that rocked the area surrounding him. As the smoke cleared, Shikamaru looked down the blood-splattered hole to see the various parts of Hidan lying at the bottom while his head was facing him. Haha, Gyahahaha. Well, look at this, you've screwed me over pretty bad. Hidan's head yelled up at Shikamaru. But Jashin-sama will deal his retibution. Feel the wrah of Divine judgment. Yeah, like I'm afraid of that. Shikamaru said as he pulled out a kunai with a wire attached to it. You and me, we believe in different things. I believe in the will o' fire, but right now your god isn't that Jashin-sama or whatever, it's me. Pulling his kunai up to his face level, he said. Now I deal my judgment. He then threw the kunai with an explosive tag attached to the midsection of the hole where it then blew up, making Hidan go wide-eyed. Like I said, you will feel the wrath of the divine Jashin-sama's divine judgment. Just you wait. Hidan yelled up like a crazed man as rubble fell on him. Yahahaha, I shall be the executor of that judgment. I can take you out with just my teeth. I'll bite you down into tiny little pieces. He yelled up as the last piece of rock fell on his head. With Naruto, Kakuzu had to admit, he was not going to win. This man was surely more powerful than anyone he had ever fought. He may even be more powerful than Pain, and that was saying something. Ha ha ha, you remind me of Leader Sama. He said, he may as well help out the guy who proved to be more powerful than him and given him a good workout. Leader Sama, Naruto questioned. Yes, the leader of Akatsuki has your eyes, the Rinnegan. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. Of course he acted surprised as he knew already thanks to his informant within the organization. I'll have to remind to repay Konan-chan. Naruto nodded. I see. Not giving Kakuzu any chance, Naruto once more performed another jutsu. Mokuden. Jubaku Iso. Out of nowhere a tree started to grow around Kakuzu, effectively trapping him strongly even though he tried to break through. Kage Bunshin, he said as he created a clone. Putting his hand out he formed a Rasengan. His clone started to add wind chakra, only this time the wind started to pick up, ripping the ground apart, destroying trees around him. He closed his eyes while focusing on the power of the jutsu. Futon. Rasenshuriken, Naruto declared while everyone had to shield their eyes from the sheer power coming from it. Naruto held up his hand as the jutsu whirled around him, taking on the appearance of 4 large points, making the Rasengan appear as a giant Fuma Shuriken, with the Rasengan in the center remaining a perfect sphere. Kakuzu looked at it like he had shit himself, which at this situation he wouldn't surprise himself if he did. That jutsu, I have to get out of here, that will definitely kill me. Sideline. I can't believe he done it, exclaimed Kakashi, who right now seemed ecstatic, confusing the others around him. Done what? Asked Kurenai as the wind seemed to get stronger and stronger. He completed the Rasengan. Completed? Asked Ino as the screeching was getting higher by the minute. Kakashi nodded. Yes, when the Yondaime created the Rasengan, he initially wanted it to combine his elemental affinity with it to make the ultimate jutsu possible. However, he was never able to progress that far as he had a pregnant wife to take care of, and truthfully he never had the control for it. But it seems Naruto has done the impossible, again. He exclaimed happily, and the others finally got what he was saying. Amazing. Choji said, proud of how far his friend had come from being the dead last. Naruto-kun can really surprise you at times. Yugito spoke with a smirk. Battle. Naruto coasted his arm back and looked at Kakuzu, who was struggling in the tree he was in. Goodbye, Futon. Rasenshuriken. Swinging his arm forward he threw the jutsu. No one could believe it. Naruto had just thrown a jutsu that needed so much control and had so much power that no one could even dream of using, and yet he simply chucked it like it was nothing. The Rasenshuriken soared across the battlefield like a disc, screeching until it hit its mark, cutting through the tree and lifting Kakuzu up in the air from the force. The Rasenshuriken then exploded, creating a dome 80 feet wide of wind and chakra. Inside the dome, though, the masks that were attached started to crack all over before finally dissolving into nothingness, and Kakuzu was being cut to shreds at a molecular level. Naruto stood at the same spot, amazed at his jutsu as it was the first time he used it against someone. He looked as the dome started lowering down until it revealed Kakuzu still floating in midair, being attacked by hundreds if not thousands of tiny wind blades before falling down in the 40 feet deep crater. Naruto started walking towards the crater along with his friends who jumped by him. Such power! Exclaimed Ino as she almost pissed herself seeing the destructive power. Amazing! Whispered Kurenai as she wished and promised that she would never get on Naruto's bad side. Good thing she always admired him then. She was also happy that one of the people who had a hand in killing Asuma was now dead. Many believed that her and Asuma were an item for a while, when in reality they were close friends who always shared their secrets. Ever since the academy they were like siblings. She only hoped Shikamaru was alright, as he was the closest to Asuma, probably more than her on some level. She also knew that Naruto viewed Asuma as some sort of uncle, as he was the only other person other than the Sandaime who actually treated him like a real person when he was younger. Asuma had informed her of Naruto and what he was like, which caused her to become intrigued and understood that his idiotic ways was a mask to hide the pain, as it was easier that way, something she could relate to. Kakashi also was awed and terrified of the jutsu Naruto had just used, as it was truly a powerful jutsu which looked like it was a one-hit kill. In fact, all of Naruto's jutsu that had seen had been destructive and high level. If he was honest with himself, he didn't expect Naruto to become this much powerful. He was going to fix his past mistakes and hope that he could still give Naruto some jutsu such as his own Chidori and Reikiri, which, knowing Naruto, he could improve them in ways he only wished he could. Kakashi walked up to Naruto a little wobbly at first, as he was slightly fatigued from his previous battle. He stood by Naruto and grasped his shoulder in a proud way. Your father would be proud of you. he said, making Naruto grin and scratch the back of his head, which caused Ino and Kurenai to nearly shout, "Kawaii." Before anyone could say anything, they heard someone appearing close by. Son of a bitch. Looking over, they came to the sight of Kagura looking at the crater with wide eyes. Lifting her eyes from that, she walked over to Naruto. "You never told me about that jutsu, Naruto-kun," she said with a pout, which Kurenai thought she looked like Anko. "It was too dangerous to show you without getting hurt," he explained casually. Hearing Kakashi cough, Naruto looked at him before he realized that no one knew Kagura. "Sorry, guys, this is Kagura Ankai, the Shuju Hikiho," he said, making them wide-eyed that Naruto knew such a person. It wasn't a secret that she was a bloodthirsty Kagura. This Kakashi Hatake, Kurenai Yuhi, Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akamichi, and from I understand, Yamato. "It's nice to meet you," Kakashi said, being polite. "Right back at ya," she said before turning to Naruto. "We should get going soon." "Where are you going?" Kurenai asked. "Well, we were going to take Yugito back to Kumo and kick the shit out of the council for what I can presume sending her here for a trap, am I right?" he asked Yugito, who grew a scowl. "Yep. Those bastards have hated me for as long as I can remember." "Well, we'll be seeing ya," Naruto said as he started to walk away before stopping and getting something out of his pocket and going back to Kakashi. "Could you give this back to Tsunade? It's important. Oh, and I've made sure only she or Jiraiya can open it," he told him before he gave him a scroll and getting a nod. "Sure, Naruto, do you think you'll ever return?" Sighing, Naruto turned back to look at Kagura, who was talking with Yugito. "I don't know, I doubt it while Danzo and the elders are still there, and if I was, I'd make sure Kagura comes with me." "Lovers?" Kakashi asked with a raised brow while Kurenai and Ino glared at him, until Naruto actually chuckled. "More than you know, Kakashi, more than you know," he said with a smirk before he walked away towards the center of the crater, leaving two blushing women and a perversely giggling man while Choji and Yamato blinked between the interaction. Naruto walked over to the body of Kakuzu and opened up a scroll in front of him. Drawing some seals on the black scroll, he then placed his hand on the seal and Kakuzu, and just like the body disappeared. Walking back to Kagura and Yugito, he grasped both of their shoulders before vanishing in a crimson flash, leaving the Konoha Nins to go home. With Shikamaru. Shikamaru had just walked out of the forest line with a deer of his clan walking alongside him. He was currently holding the packet of cigarettes that were once Osama's in his hand. Before he could go on any further, a pink and black blur dropped down in front of him. Sakura and Sai dropped down in front of Shikamaru in a crouch and stood up. They noticed how Shikamaru looked disheveled as if he had been in a war of his own, and they also noticed the deer next to him, which they thought is strange. "Here you are," Sakura exclaimed, happy to see Shikamaru alive. "Reinforcements?" asked Shikamaru with a raised eyebrow. "You're a little late, aren't you?" Sakura and Sai both looked shocked for a moment before Sakura asked. "What? Shikamaru, you took out an Akatsuki on your own?" While Sai muttered, "He's more impressive than I thought." Shikamaru then put the pack in his pouch. "This time I really had to do it, so yeah," he said as he glanced at the deer beside him. Sakura smiled slightly, secretly proud of her friend. "Yeah, I guess. What's going on over at the others?" "We left them to go help you, so," Sakura trailed while Sai finished off. "Let's go back to them." The three of them then jumped into the trees to meet up with the others, and unknowingly and old friend. Later, both teams eventually joined up and were now stood in a part of the forest debriefing each other about what had happened. "So Naruto really shown up, huh?" Sakura asked, wishing she had seen him. "Yep. He's strong too, but right now, we need to get back to Konoha. Naruto asked me to give Tsunade a scroll and it might be important," Kakashi said, getting a nod from everyone before they shot off. Kakashi only hoped the scroll didn't contain any dreadful news. Oh, he had no idea. Tsunade's office. Tsunade sighed as she listened to Kakashi's report on the mission and how they almost got killed, or at least they would have had a certain blonde-haired Jinchuriki not saved them at the last minute. While she was glad that Naruto seemed to be doing well and happy with his life, and from what Kakashi had also passed on to her, he's already on his way to rebuilding his clan, she was also sad that she hadn't been able to see him herself. After all these years, she still couldn't get over the fact of how strong Naruto had gotten, stronger than possibly the Yondaime, and that was saying something. She sometimes wondered why Naruto never created his own village. With his popularity, she knew it wouldn't be hard to recruit shinobi. To think that the very village she served had banished him out of their fear. On some level, she was happy he was banished, not because she had ill intentions towards him, but rather because she wanted him to enjoy his life and what's out there rather than be stuck in a village that hates your guts. Oh, and Tsunade-sama, Naruto told me to give you this, he said, handing her a scroll which she hastily took out of his hands and tore it open. Unraveling the scroll, she read it to herself. Dear Tsunade, sorry I've not been able to make contact until now. Things have been stressful for the past few years, what with all the traveling and training for Akatsuki, Orochimaru and Sasuke. Anyway, hopefully when I see you we can talk about what I've done the past few years. Right now though, there is an important issue that Konoha needs to be aware of. Despite my anger towards Danzo and the elders, I don't wish to see Konoha burned to the ground. The reason for this scroll is that I believe that Orochimaru is planning an attack on Konoha in the next couple of weeks. I know it may not sound believable, but I have someone who is close to Orochimaru as my spy. He has been rebuilding his forces the past few years while improving on the cursed seal to allow the wearers more control, making them more dangerous. What I need for you to do, however, is plead with the council to hire me as a sort of mercenary. This will also allow me the opportunity to be able to help protect Konoha for a while, as I know Akatsuki will attack there, knowing I have people I care about. Also at the bottom of this scroll is a seal that only your blood will open it. Use it if there is no other option. Goodbye. Hopefully I'll see you soon. Love, Naruto. P.S. I'll be bringing Kagura if I am coming back. I will be on my way to Takigakure if you need to reply. Smiling to herself at the fact she may see Naruto soon, she bit her thumb and slid it along the seal, smearing her blood on it, causing a poof, revealing the three-pronged kunai, which caused her eyes to widen. Son of a bitch actually learned it. Chuckling to herself, she pocketed the kunai before looking up at teams in front of her. Thank you, Kakashi, you're all dismissed, she said with a smile while they gave nods before leaving. Pressing a button on the intercom, she spoke. Shizune, call a council meeting in the next hour, and tell them it's important, she ordered. Hi Tsunade-sama, she heard back. Nodding to herself, she relaxed back in her chair while hoping she sees Naruto soon. Kumogakure. Raikage Tower. There weren't many things that could easily scare the Raikage. Being born and raised in a place such as Kumo had built a tough shell around him and learned to be calm and face all dangers that may come at you. Despite this, there were things that did scare him, such as his assistant who was get pissed at him for missing a meeting or accidentally destroying his office and training ground. Then again, maybe all women could scare him, especially when they give you the look. And let's not get started on the paperwork fiasco that seemed to multiply whenever he looked away. However, what really scares him is the full-on glare by a pair of Rinnegan eyes, while Yugito and Kagura stood off to the side watching everything. What the hell is wrong with you? Naruto growled out angrily. What? The Raikage asked, confused. You sent Yugito on a mission to deliver a package, instead she got ambushed by a pair of Akatsuki. Now try and tell me how they knew exactly where she would be. He spat out. The council gave me the mission for Yugito, said it was important and only she could do it. Raikage explained. And you didn't make sure what the mission was? You know better than me that the council want Yugito gone. I know for a fact that if it was Killer Bee going on that mission, you would have double-checked everything. At that, the Raikage jumped out his chair. How da, only for him to be forced down by an invisible force. It was at this point that Team Samui came through the door and could easily sense the tension in the room, especially when they hadn't seen Naruto so angry and the Raikage so red in the face. You know full well that you should have backtracked the mission, make sure it was reliable and who the client was. If Yugito didn't have my Hiraishin kunai, she may have been dead right now, or worse. He exclaimed angrily. I have half a mind to go and kill those pathetic counselors, they remind me too much of Konoha's council. Alright, you're right, I should have double-checked them, but I didn't expect the council to pull this one on me, especially when they're already scared of you, he admitted while Team Samui looked on in shock at what was happening. Looking at Yugito off to the side, they saw her looking down while Kagura had a blank look on her face. If they're scared of me, I'll go give them reason to be even more scared, Naruto said with a creepy grin before he vanished in a crimson flash. Oh shit. Raikage groaned before getting up with the others following. Council chamber. As the council were in a meeting of the usual day-by-day business, while silently celebrating for getting rid of the demon child once and for all, they were ill-prepared for the doors to come flying off its hinges, and meeting the deathly gaze of the Rinnegan. "How are you all this fine day?" he asked with a sickly sweet voice. "Namikaze-sama," whispered a merchant in shock. "I think it's been a lovely day to be honest, traveling around, enjoying the sights, when all of a sudden I was teleported to a fight involving the Akatsuki and a certain Jinchuriki. Now I know you guys had nothing to do with that, right?" He asked rhetorically, and yet it sounded so sincere. "Of course, we would never do something like that," one man protested. "So it wasn't you who assigned the Yugito her mission, which ended up being an ambush?" "No. Like we said, we wouldn't do such a thing," another man protested while sweat trickled down his forehead. "I can never understand councils. I mean, this village practically worships Jinchuriki, views them as something akin to angels, the complete opposite of my home, and yet, there's people like you who wish to take it all away from them. And for what? Power. Money. You people make me sick. If I were the Raikage, I would have you in jail for treason. The last time I checked, a Jinchuriki as a human being, a shinobi, part of the community, and I know better than anyone, seeing as I am one myself." He growled out as the council started glaring at him. Behind Naruto stood the Raikage, Yugito, Team Samui and Killer Bee, who had heard the commotion. "Listen here, you disrespectful brat. You can't tell any of us what to do. This is not your village, so go home where you and your kind belong." One of the more stupid council members ranted. Naruto's eyes bored into the council members with a chilly gaze. Lifting his hand up, he used the power over gravity to send the man against the wall, cracking his bones under the pressure. "You're right, I'm not part of the village, I'm an ally from the outside, and if you want to keep it that way, treat my kind with respect that they actually do deserve, because I doubt you want me as your enemy." He threatened them before letting the guy fall. Breathing in to calm himself, he turned around with a small smile. "Well, that's that taken care of. What we having for dinner?" he asked, causing them to face fault at the question. "The old Naruto will always be there somewhere." Kanahagakure. Hokage Tower. Council chamber. The council had changed a lot in the years Naruto was gone, as there used to be three sides to the council: the civilian, shinobi and the elders. However, through the years they all noticed that the civilian side were taking votes in matters that had nothing to do with them whatsoever, so they came to the decision to throw them out and keep the elders and shinobi side to make decisions. Now sat around the room was Tsunade Senju, Jiraiya, Sume Inuzuka, Hiyashi Hyuga, Shibi Aburame, Choza Akamichi, Shikaku Nara, Inoichi Yamanaka, Danzo Shimura, Kaharu Udatane and Homura Mitokado. "What is this meeting about, Tsunade?" Danzo asked with his one eye staring in a bored fashion. "You will call me Hokage-sama, or Tsunade-sama Danzo," she snapped, irritated with the cripple. "Anyway, I have received information from a reliable source and it could cost us dearly depending on the way we act." "What is it?" Sume asked, knowing it can't be good. "Well, when is it ever?" "In 2 weeks' time, Orochimaru will attack us with everything he has," she informed them, causing them all to gasp in shock. "We must do something to stop them. We don't have the resources at the moment to deal with an attack by Orochimaru," Inoichi informed them while getting nods all around. "I know, I have sent a scroll to the case cage informing him of our situation, and now all we have to do is wait for his reply." "Will he even help us?" Choza asked, getting everyone's attention. "I mean, wasn't he best friends with Naruto? What reason does he have to help us?" Tsunade chuckled and let a small smile grace her features. "Because we will be hiring Naruto as a mercenary to ride with us in the upcoming invasion." "Absolutely not," Danzo exclaimed, speaking for the first time. "That monster cannot be trusted whatsoever. We don't even know where his loyalties lie." "Oh, for fuck's sake." Hiyashi spoke out, surprising them all since he never swore. "Naruto has never betrayed us, never lead us to believe he wasn't loyal to his friends. The only reason you don't want him here's because you're afraid of how strong he has gotten, and lie to me. We've all read the bingo book, he is his father's son, no doubt about it, and that scares you more than you like to admit." Everyone was stunned to silence hearing that. Despite knowing Naruto wouldn't kill them or attack them, elders not included, he was still a man to be feared for his abilities that he had gained in the recent years. "Hiyashi's correct. We can't let irrational fears play with our minds. We have done that many times before and look at where it has gotten us. I say we bring Naruto back, but leave it up to him whether or not he wants to be a shinobi of Konoha or just a mercenary. Shikaku explained. So the rest of you agree? Tsunade asked whilst the clan heads gave a nod, which was enough for her. Very well, I will send the rookies out to retrieve Naruto in the next week to bring him back. She said before getting up and leaving. You're coming back, brat. I'll finally see the man you've grown up to be. Later, Tsunade's office. Tsunade Senju was currently sat behind her office contemplating on the latest news she had gotten. Akatsuki had been sighted close to Takigakure, the same place Naruto said he was going to be, and the only reason she could think of them being there is the Jinchuriki they currently have protected, but she knew they wouldn't be able to stop the Akatsuki, so that is why standing in front of her were the Rookie 12 along with Kakashi Hatake, Kurenai Yuhi, Maeda Guy. She had also informed them about the invasion that will be led by Orochimaru in the coming weeks. The Rookie 12 had changed quite a bit over the years since Naruto was banished. Sakura had taken her training more seriously under Tsunade and became what people had dubbed Mini Tsunade, with her strength and expertise in the medical department. She had also been dying to apologize to Naruto for everything she had said to the boy, as she had never been able to forgive herself. The fact that he was banished because of Sasuke didn't help matters either, especially when she realized just how corrupt Sasuke had become over time. She changed her outfit, which now consisted of the same basic red top as in, with black gloves, black high-heeled boots, black shorts, short pink apron-like skirt, and pink elbow protectors. Sakura is now also armed with a Chunin's Tanto above her medical pouch. Forehead protector has also changed to red in color. Ino had changed drastically. She had become more focused on her training, much to everyone's shock, and she learned most of her family's jutsu as well as an array of elemental jutsu that had helped her greatly in missions. Now she understood why Naruto loved jutsus so much. Ino had removed the bandages that she used to wear around her waist, which allowed her stomach to be seen, and replaced the fabric arm wear on her elbows with fishnet, and also wears fishnet over her knees. Ino is now also equipped with a Chunin's Tanto, which she wears above her medical pouch, much like Sakura. Shikamaru hadn't honestly changed much, other than the fact he actually trained harder, maybe because he wanted to help Naruto in the future as he knew of the dangers the blonde faced, or maybe it was because he realized just how dangerous missions were if not fully prepared, something he learned on his last mission with Naruto. Shikamaru has grown noticeably taller. He has also gone under a costume change, sporting a different undershirt and pants, and changing his earrings from rings to studs, though the placement of his headband is the same place as it always was. Shikamaru has been equipped with a Chunin's Tanto. He was also wearing a flak jacket ever since he first became a Chunin. Choji hadn't changed much either, other than deciding to take his training more seriously, since in the retrieval mission he was beaten within an inch of his life thanks to his family's pills. Ever since then he had never had to use them. Choji has brown hair, swirl marks on his cheeks, and like the rest of his clan, he has a much rounder physique than most other people. He sports a red top with armor on his torso, arms, and upper legs, similar to his father. On the front of his chest armor is the obligatory kanji for eat. His brown hair has grown much longer, changes his earrings from rings to studs, and he now looks less overweight and more muscular, just like what he himself had always claimed, big-boned. Kiba also has changed a lot ever since Naruto was banished. He had become more of a controlled person. Instead of being a loudmouth, he was more calm with his nerves and able to fight better now that he didn't get angry fast. He has messy brown hair, sharp black eyes with vertical slit-like pupils, pronounced canine teeth, and nails that he can change into claws. He also has the distinct red fang markings of the Inuzuka clan on his cheeks. His outfit changed to a form-fitting black jacket and pants with a black forehead protector and black sandals. Shino was the same. Just like all Aburame, he didn't really say much to anyone, and to be honest he preferred it that way as it was much more relaxing. Shino himself didn't like the way Naruto was banished, since he had kind of admired the boy years ago, as he always felt like he was like himself in the regards of being an outcast. Shino has dark bushy brown hair, pale skin. His appearance became even more mysterious, with his jacket hanging down to his knees and the addition of a hood that obstructs his face even more and a satchel on his back. Hinata had changed the most though, she never stuttered anymore, she was probably the most confident person there and one of the strongest kunoichi. Ever since the banishment she had thrown herself into training non-stop, even to such levels that her father actually worried for her, which was a first. She had let her hair grow to waist length, and wears a white lavender jacket with navy pants with black sandals. Although she still wears her forehead protector around her neck, the cloth has changed to black in color. Tenten hadn't changed much at all. Since she didn't really know Naruto, it didn't affect her all that much, well, not to the extent it did in the others anyway. Her outfit had changed from a pink blouse to a white one and red pants instead of green. She now wears black fingerless gloves. Everything is still a reference to the Chinese culture. She holds a giant tool summoning scroll on her back that she uses when fighting. Lee had seemed depressed as he looked up to Naruto as he saw him as a brother of sorts, seeing as Naruto, like himself, was the dead lasts of their year. Hearing him being banished, he couldn't help but feel it was most unyouthful, which made him train twice as hard, to the displeasure of his teammates. Lee, well, he wore the same except for a vest top like many other shinobi, plus the fact he was much taller now. Neji had started mentioning fate a bit more again as he saw that with Naruto banished that fate had intervened, stopping Naruto from achieving his goal to become Hokage, never mind the fact Sasuke was welcomed back like fuck all happened. Neji abandoned the bandages. Instead of the regular tan jacket and shorts, he now wears traditional white and black Hyuga robes. This may have not only been to make his attacks easier, but to show that he is now closer to his clan. Neji is usually seen with a large tan and black drawstring bag, which he carries over his shoulder. Looking up, Tsunade held a grave look. I've called you all here for a very special mission that needs each and every one of you. Kakashi seemed to raise an eyebrow at that. A mission that needs us all, what could be so important? He asked, with everyone else silently agreeing. Tsunade folded her hands in front of her face and sighed. Akatsuki. That one single word was enough to stop any comments that had been on their tongues as they all stiffened up and drew in gasps, thinking and hoping that Naruto was involved somehow. In Naruto. They had all been told about Naruto's connection with the group and had trained as hard as they could to help fight alongside him. Whether he was banished or not, he was still a comrade. Sakura, who had her hands gripping the side of her skirt, looked at Tsunade with a grave look. What of Akatsuki? She asked, wanting to know what they would be facing. Akatsuki had been sighted close to Tokigakure. At first I didn't see what they were after from there, until I realized they currently have a kunoichi there that goes by the name of Fu, the Jinchuriki of the Nanabi no Kabutomushi. She said, causing everyone's eyes to widen. What has Naruto got to do with this though? Kurenai asked, confused. I'll get to that in a moment, don't worry. She promised. Do we know what member or Akatsuki was sighted? Neji asked. Tsunade sighed and shook her head. Unfortunately, we don't have a clue. The only thing that can honestly be done is be prepared for anything that may come at you. When do we leave? Lee asked, wanting a good fight. As soon as possible. I want you all to go home and pack whatever you will need for this mission. Everyone gave a nod of acknowledgement. And in a week Naruto will be at Tokigakure, for probably the same reasons. I don't understand. Tenten said, confused. Naruto sent me a scroll by giving it to Kakashi when his team met him. It told me all about this invasion by Orochimaru and that he wanted us to hire him as a mercenary, which is what you guys will make sure you do. In 1 week I want you all to make contact with Naruto and tell him he can come back. Everyone smiled at that, glad to have him back. Will he be a shinobi of Konoha? Shikamaru asked. That's up to him. He can be a shinobi of the leaf or simply be a mercenary. Also there will a woman with him, Kagura. She said, only for Kakashi to giggle perversely. Oh yes, she will definitely be with him. He said with another giggle. Nevertheless, help fend off Akatsuki from taking Fu and bring back Naruto. Uzumaki Namikaze, dismissed. Getting a round of nods, they left to prepare for what they knew was going to be a tiresome mission. Forest outside of Tokigakure. 1 week later. Naruto and Kagura had left Kumo after spending a couple days to catch up on some kenjutsu training as they felt like they were lacking in that area. In those days, however, Naruto had started to have some sort of relationship with Yugito, Samui and Karui, although not intimate yet. He had told them he would end up having a harem because he wanted to rebuild his clan back to what it once was, so this led to explaining to them about Kagura already part of the harem. Meitarumi, the Mizukage wanted to be and a friend of his would be too. Obviously he couldn't tell them it was Conan, seeing as she is his spy and any information leaked out would put her in danger. And to his surprise they were more than happy. Well, Karui proved it by giving him one of the most intense makeout session he had ever had. Yugito had done similar thanks to Nibi encouraging her, while Samui and him kissed, but not to the extent of the other due to her having created an ice wall around her heart which was slowly crumbling each passing day. It was also the time of week to go to Takigakure because he had to check up on Fu, the Jinchuriki of the Nanabi no Kabutomushi. He had met her a couple years ago, only she only knew him as her village's hero for helping out her brother Shibuki. They had eventually gained a good friendship due them coming from similar backgrounds, as the only one who really liked her was her brother while the village just ignored her. Border of Takigakure. Slave camp. In a dense jungle that went on for miles inside of Kusagakure, a bunch of bandits and some missing nin from various villages were laughing, drinking, and chatting about how they raided a small village, killing men, children and women alike. In the camp they had captured women who were ages 14 to 35 and imprisoned in cages as a sort of victory trophy. They were whimpering and crying because they knew that with being captured by bandits and missing nin, they would plan on raping them and doing unspeakable things to them. Just then all of the mentioned bandits and missing nin got up and approached the cages looking like animals on the hunt with bottles of sake swinging around, showing just how drunk they were, terrifying the woman and hoping for a miracle to drop down. Ha ha ha, look at them crying and whimpering. One bandit said with a malicious smile on his face as some women ducked their heads away scared to death. Another bandit stepped forward with a smirk on his face. Ha ha ha, it just makes it all the more fun. Well, then, a missing nin with a slashed Iwagakure headband. Why are we waiting? He said as he unlocked a cage and pulled a woman out who looked to be in her 20s, kicking and screaming the whole time only for the missing nin to slap her. Shut it, bitch, soon you'll be screaming for a different reason. He said with insane laughter at the end with everyone else joining in. Before anyone could do anything a voice called out through the forest. Hado number 4. Byakurai. A large streak of condensed yellow lightning burst from the behind the trees and struck the missing nin in the side of the head, killing the man instantly, allowing the woman to drop down and scramble back. You people disgust me, humans like you should never exist. A voice said as a figure dropped into view, revealing it to be Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and he was not happy. A bandit who was clearly drunk laughed at the newcomer. Ho ho ho, look what we have here, fellers, some punk kid wanting to play ninja. He said, laughing more along with the bandits while the missing nin were getting a bit scared at seeing the person shinobi came to fear when they saw the renowned Shinku Senko. Naruto chuckled and shook his head. You guys really need to pay attention to who you're talking to. He said, narrowing his eyes, and his hand gripped the hilt of Ryujin Jaka tightly, prepared to start killing. One of the missing nin gulped fearfully and turned to his allies. We should let it go, this guy is the Shinku Senko, we don't stand a chance. His fellow missing nins gave hesitant nods while some of the less intelligent bandits laughed loudly. Ha, as if this wannabe punk could EV, his words were cut off as he started to spit out blood randomly. Looking down he saw a katana stabbed through his heart from behind him. Everyone else started getting panicked as they watched the blonde shinobi vanish from his spot and appearing behind the bandit, stabbing him in the chest like it was nothing. Heat started to come off of the stab wound before the person was completely enveloped in flames and turned to dust. Naruto suddenly turned around and shot forward with his sword dragging behind him as he started cutting down bandit and shinobi alike as if they were a mere flies on the wall. Screams filled the forest as heads rolled, limbs were lost and half of those that were struck by Ryujin Jaka were turned to dust and ash while small fires started popping up. The area was soon covered in scorch marks from the dead bandits and missing nin that once stood against the force known as Shinku Senko, showing everyone why they should never screw him. Naruto sheathed Ryujin Jaka securely and turned towards the cages where all of the women were looking at him in awe with small blushes on their faces at seeing their hero in action. Walking over to them he unlocked all the cages, causing all the women to run over to Naruto, thanking him, hugging him and even kissing him all over for freeing them from a fate worse than death. Naruto chuckled as he backed away slightly, looking at them all. Why don't I get you all back to your village so you can be with your loved ones? He said with a smile as they all nodded their head vigorously with giant smiles on their faces. Small village outside of Takigakure. Reaching the village, Naruto found all of the women's family, friends and loved ones were waiting at the gate for them. As soon as they laid eyes on the women, they immediately swarmed them, thanking the gods they had been returned to them before anything terrible could happen. Naruto watched the scene with a small smile on his face, glad he could reunite families with each other. Just as he was about to turn around and leave to get on his way, an elderly voice stopped him in his tracks. Wait a minute, young man. The male voice says. Naruto turns around to see a man who looked to be about 70, crouched over slightly holding an envelope in his hands, walking towards him. Wait. Please take this money. It's for saving my daughter and everyone's loved one from those horrible bandits and shinobi. He says, but Naruto shakes his head and smiles. No thanks, old man. Keep your money. I didn't do it for that. Naruto explained, getting a look of shock and awe from him and the villagers. Are you sure? We were gonna pay for bringing them back. Didn't you do this for money? He asks, and Naruto's response was a shake of his head. No sir. I just did what I thought is right. Besides, if there's one thing I hate more than anything, it's bandits and missing nin who think they can do whatever the hell they like, and money right now is the least of my worries. Use it for your own purpose. He said with a grin on his face. The man just blinks at Naruto for a while but then smiles back. Thank you so much, young man. Oh, where are my manners? My name is Momoji. We are forever in your debt for bringing the women back. We don't know what we would do if something had happened, he said, bowing his head in thankfulness while everyone else also bowed. Naruto simply chuckled and smiled. You're welcome, and if you have any more problems with bandits, look me up. Well, it's time for me to go, see ya. He says as his body started to turn into fire before dissipating, leaving no sign of him being stood there. Later that day, Takigakure. Akunoichi stood in an open field with a nervous look on her face as she faced her opponent. This woman was Fu, the Jinchuriki of the Nanabi no Kabutomushi. Fu wore a clip with her green hair and had pink eyes. Her ninja outfit consisted of a high white shirt, white armlets, and a fishnet waistband, her Takigakure forehead protector being worn on her arm like Shikamaru. Fu also carried a red cylindrical object on her back. Her opponent's, however, was from the world-renowned organization known as Akatsuki. He was, however, called Kisame Hoshigaki. Kisame was a very tall and strong shinobi, with a distinctive shark-like appearance, complete with pale blue skin, small white eyes, gill-like facial structures, and sharp triangular teeth. Kisame also wears a dark purple nail color, like Itachi. Underneath his Akatsuki cloak, Kisame wears an outfit similar to the one that his colleague, Zabuza Momochi, wore. On his left ring finger is his Akatsuki ring, which bears the kanji for South Nan, Nan. Come on girlie, just come peacefully, otherwise my Samahata will be getting some lovely chakra to eat from you. Kisame said with a feral smirk showing his sharp teeth. Fu looked at her opponent and frowned slightly. She knew that this fish man would beat her. She was strong, but she wasn't that strong to beat someone of this caliber. But he wants Nanabi. I can't let him take her. Never mind the fact that I will be killed, I have to do all I can. Where the hell is Naruto when you need him? You think he'll give up just like that? You really are as dumb as you look. She said with a smirk as Kisame just grinned wider as he gripped Samahata. Well then, I'll just have to shave your legs off first. Shooting forward, he brought Samahata around and swung at Fu, who brought a kunai up with chakra flowing through it to defend herself. Samahata was brought down on the kunai, causing an explosion to erupt as a crater was formed. Fu pushed Kisame off of her and flipped backwards to get some distance between them so she could eye the situation better. Looking ahead, she saw Kisame stood in the newly created crater with his Samahata hung on his shoulder as he stared at her with his fish-like eyes. Fu held her arms out as bugs started to come from under her armbands before flying around her, making Kisami's eyebrow raise. With having the Nanabi no Kabutomushi sealed within me, it gives me the abilities to control bugs, much like the Aburame of Konoha do. Thrusting her arms out, what seemed like thousands of bugs flew at Kisame at astounding speed, flipping through hand seals. He called out. Suiden. Sukoden no Jutsu. Opening his mouth, a large amount of water shot out of it, where it then started taking the ghostly form of a shark that cut through the bugs heading for Fu. Fu, seeing the danger heading for her, put her hands in a seal and called out. Mushi Kame no Jutsu. All of her bugs suddenly flew towards her and wrapped around her, making a dome-like shield protecting her as the water shark struck the shield, causing a small tremor in the earth. With the Konoha team, at the border between Hai no Kuni and Takigakure. We are close, Shino said, causing everyone to look at him as they all jumped through the trees. How do you know? Tenten asked with a raised brow. I can sense bugs being used along with someone that holds a large amount of chakra. He explained. The bugs must be a side effect of having the Nanabi no Kabutomushi sealed within her, making her like an Aburame. Neji deduced, getting nods from his fellow Jonin. Kiba started sniffing around before scrunching his nose in disgust. I can smell what reminds me of fish, and a lot of blood, as if this person had killed all his life. Kakashi placed his hand under his chin, thinking before his lone eye widened. Out of Akatsuki, the only one who sounds like that is Kisame Hoshigaki. If that is the case, we need to hurry up. What's so dangerous about him? Ino asked with a confused face. Kisame Hoshigaki was a former member of the Kiri no Shinobugatana Nananan Shu. His chakra reserves could rival a Biju, making him a powerhouse, and his sword Samahata is a truly monstrous thing. If there is anyone in Akatsuki who is a real danger, it is him. Kakashi explained, making everyone's eyes widen. Kakashi's eye also widened when he realized something. Itachi and he were after Naruto. He said, making them look at him in shock. When the pair came to Konoha all those years ago, they told me they were looking for the Yondaime's legacy. So what does that mean? Naruto is Kisami's target? Sakura asked with a worried look. Kurenai sighed sadly, knowing it may be true. It may be possible, but why would he be without Itachi, unless they're not partners anymore? We should hurry then, we have no idea what we'll be getting into. Guy said in a moment of seriousness as he got nods from all around before the shot off. With Naruto. Naruto was flying through the trees at full speed. He had felt demonic chakra not long ago, and lucky for him he wasn't that far from the location. What made him panic more was when he felt a familiar and an extremely high level of chakra. He knew without a doubt that it was Akatsuki attacking Takigakure for their Jinchuriki. Lucky for him he had been there before and was familiar with the village leader Shibuki. Over the years he had found out that the village had saw him as a hero, much like other villages he had saved has. He couldn't help but feel proud of himself at the fact that he was being seen as a hero in different countries, and yet he couldn't even get that sort of respect in his own village. Shaking his head from his thoughts, he narrowed his eyes ahead of him, focusing on his goal to save his fellow Jinchuriki. Akatsuki's going to be one more member down when I'm through with them. He said with venom lacing his tone. You're not alone in that one. Kagura said with equal venom in her tone. Oh, and next time you go off to save some people, at least leave me some notice, will ya? She said with a tick mark on her forehead as he had just shot off, leaving her in the dust. Sorry, he said with a sheepish look. Hero complex, can't help it, but you shouldn't be so slow. He said with chuckle as she glared at him before he flew off, while hearing her scream several curse words. With Fu and Kisame. Fu's bugs dispersed from around her as she held out her hand, firing them at Kisame, who just kept batting them away with his large sword, getting annoyed as more and more bugs came at him. Haijutsu. Mushidama. She called out as all of the bugs around Kisame covered his entire body, sucking chakra out of him. What she didn't realize, however, was that Kisame held a lot of chakra. All of a sudden water started leaking out of the bugs before it exploded in water, showing that it was a Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu. She said, shocked that she hadn't noticed when he made a clone. Must have been when I was shielded by my bugs, the crafty bastard. She was shaken from her thoughts as she was hit in her with such strength that she was sent flying, hitting the ground, causing her to get cut up along the way. Placing her hand on the ground, she slowed herself down and twisted so that she could flip up to stand on her feet, glaring at Kisame, who had a smirk on his face. She noticed how the wrapping on Samahata had come up at the top, revealing blue scales. Looking down at her side, she noticed that her clothes had been torn and she had a large gash that had ripped her skin. Suddenly red chakra started bubbling around the area, healing her skin almost instantly, making her sigh in relief. Kisame stabbed the ground, placing Samahata there as he flipped through hand seals. Suidan. Suiryuden no Jutsu. A large water dragon appeared in front of Kisame and shot at Fu, who was unprepared for the jutsu. Luckily for her, Kami was on her side as a voice called out. Doden. Doryuheiki. A large wall of solid earth rose up in front of Fu, shielding her from the might of the water dragon that slammed into it, causing water to splash over the area, some even getting Fu. As the wall lowered, Fu saw something she would never expect to ever see: 14 Konoha shinobi lined up in front of her. Snapping out of her shock, she said the first thing that came into her head. Who are you people? Kakashi looked back and I smiled. The Hokage was warned about sighting of Akatsuki in the area, and we are here to help you out. He said as if it was nothing. Why would you help me? She asked bitterly, wondering what their motive was. Let's just say we owe it to an old friend. Kiba said with a smile. Who? She asked, still suspicious of them. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Kurenai replied, making the Jinchuriki's eyes to widen. Hearing that name, she automatically blushed. Naruto sure knows a lot of womanhum, she said with a suggestive tone in her voice before chuckling. Well, if you're all friends of Naruto-kun's, then you're friends of mine. Besides, he's supposed to be here by now. Kisame looked at the group and realized he was in actual trouble. While he may be strong and confident, he wasn't stupid. Sure, he may take a few of them out, but at what cost? This could be trouble. I best be going now, he said as was about to use a shunshin to get away. Mokuten. Jubaku Iso. Planks of wood shot out of the ground and curled around Kisami's arms and legs, binding him where he stood, stopping him from getting away. You're not going anywhere, fish face, spoke a very familiar voice to the Konoha shinobi. Everyone looked over to the side to see Naruto knelt down on the ground with his palm flat on the surface and staring at Kisame with narrowed eyes. It's about damn time, Fu exclaimed with a glare. He's late because he had to go be heroic and save people from a slaver's camp, Kagura said as she dropped down beside Naruto with her scythe in hand. Ah, the Kyuubi kid is here. Last time I saw you, you was a scrawny little bastard, Kisame said with a feral grin, acting like he isn't even restrained. Looking down at the wood, his grin got bigger. So you can use the Mokuten, huh? He said with a smirk. Of course, or haven't you read the bingo book lately? Naruto said, making Kisame scowl. What's the scowl for? You and Itachi break up or have a lover's spat? He said with a sympathetic tone while the others looked at him disbelief that he was taunting someone like Kisame. Kagura chuckled and brought her Beni Akadokiami upwards. Say bye-bye, fishy, she exclaimed before charging her chakra up, causing storm clouds to appear in the sky while she called out. Kuroi Getsue no Hitoko. Swinging the Zanpakuto, a large bolt of black lightning soared towards Kisame, who looked up in shock as the bolt hit him, creating a tremor all around the group to which they jumped back from. Did she get him? Hinata asked as she activated her Byakugan. I doubt it. He was probably a clone all along, Kakashi said, looking around with his Sharingan out. Naruto looked around but couldn't see anything. Closing his eyes, he expanded his senses before he snapped his out into a part of the forest. Shinra Tensai. And just like that, part of the forest was blown away, revealing Kisame with Samahata held in front of him, protecting him. Kagura swung her Zanpakuto in a horizontal arc while black lightning danced around it and called out, Kuroi Kaminari Kurzento ha. The lightning from around it shot out like a crescent wave, hitting Kisame dead on, sending him back against a tree. Before Kisame could do anything, he was interrupted as someone spoke in his head. Kisame, retreat for now. You at too much of a disadvantage. We will retrieve the 2 Jinchuriki another time. Kisame sighed and attached Samahata on his back, confusing the group entirely. Well, looks like I've gotta go. I'll see you Kyuubi boy some other time, he said with an evil cackle as he suddenly turned to water splashing the ground. Naruto, seeing Kisame gone, slammed his fist into the ground, causing a small crater. Damn it. Kagura also sighed in annoyance and stabbed Beni Akadokiami into the ground. Come on Naruto-kun, she said as she reattached her scythe to her back. Right, he also said while dusting himself off. Kakashi, seeing everyone was alright, stepped closer to Naruto. Naruto, he said, getting the blonde's attention, who stood up and looked at him. Tsunade-sama wanted to know if you were returning or not, he said. Naruto looked back to Kakashi and smiled slightly. Tell Tsunade, I'll be there tomorrow. I still have some stuff that needs doing before I plan on doing anything. He paused as he looked at Fu, who was looking at him in amazement. I should get Fu back to Takigakure and to her brother Shibuki, he said. Kakashi I smiled and gave a nod in acceptance and turned around to everyone else. Well, it seems like everything is alright here, we should head back now. Tsunade-sama would want to hear everything as soon as possible. Everyone gave a nod and gave Naruto one last look before jumping away, leaving Naruto to sigh in relief. Thank God, that was getting awkward with everyone staring at me. He muttered to himself. Oh yeah, must be horrible having all the women look at you with lust. Fu said sarcastically. It makes things fun if you ask me. Kagura said with a perverted grin on her face. Naruto looked at Fu with a gentle smile. We should get to the village as soon as possible, your brother is probably worried sick for you. He said, getting a nod from her as they started running. That night, Naruto, when he returned with Fu, had been thanked profusely for saving her by Shibuki, who had practically hugged him to the point he almost died from being unable to breathe. He had simply told him it was no problem and it was his duty. Shibuki had then offered for him to stay for a while so he can rest up and get his things sorted out before he had to go back to Konoha and deal with the council. And now was the day when he was going to leave for God knows how long. Naruto stood at the gateway of the village that leads to the outside of the large tree with Kagura by his side like always, ready to go back to his old village that betrayed him. Looking behind him, he saw Fu and Shibuki seeing him off. Have a safe journey, Naruto-san and Kagura-san. Shibuki said with a small bow. Thanks, Shibuki-san. I doubt anything will happen though, Konoha's not far from here. He said with a small smile. He then noticed Fu's downtrodden mode and knew it was because he was leaving. He had known she started getting a crush on him but didn't want to pressure her into anything, so he had left it to see how things progressed. Walking up to her, he reached into his pouch and pulled out a 3-pronged kunai and held it out to her. If you ever need my help or in trouble, or if you just want to talk even, throw this at something and I'll be there within a moment's notice, I promise. Fu looked at the kunai in wonder, never seeing something like, and quickly took it in case he declined it and took it back. Bowing to Naruto slightly, she said. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Naruto chuckled and brought his hand under chin, lifting her head up. Leaning down a bit, he brought his lips to hers in a soft sensual kiss that almost made her faint, while Shibuki tried not to pay attention to what was happening to his sister. Pulling back, Naruto grinned at Fu's dazed look. That's something to remember me by. Hopefully when I see you again, it can last longer. He said with a chuckle as he waved to them both before leaving, Kagura following with a small chuckle. Once Naruto was out of sight, Shibuki looked at his sister, who held the kunai tightly to her chest, and chuckled. Looks like someone's in love, he said in a song-like voice, making the girl blush brightly. Shibuki, she screamed as she chased after her brother, who was laughing all the way. Hi no Kuni, Konoha. North Gates. The next day, Naruto looked at the gates with narrowed eyes. It had been 4 years since he was last here, since he was banished, and he still couldn't help but feel a little anger at those who mistreated him all those years ago. Kagura, who was stood by him, looked at the village gates with also narrowed eyes for the treatment they had given her love. Starting on his walk towards the gate, he was getting excited at seeing Tsunade again. Shikamaru too, as he was one of his best friends. Kiba was also a best friend with a certain rivalry. He had also become good friends with Neji after the Chunin exam, as the Hyuga had become more social with people now that he didn't believe in fate. Naruto came up to the gate and he noticed 2 guards at the gate booth relaxing. These 2 were Kotetsu and Izumo, the pranking Chunins and Naruto's friends, 2 of the people who saw him for him and not the fox. When the guards noticed him, they almost passed out at seeing someone back from the dead. Why Yondaime-sama? Izumo spluttered. Naruto groaned at that. Geez, I know I look like my dad, but I'm sorry to upset you, it's me, Naruto. He said, flashing them a grin. This time they did pass out from shock at having Naruto back in the village. Didn't expect that, oh well. With that, he stepped over them and carried on his merry way to the Hokage Tower. Kagura's sweat dropped as Naruto just stepped over the guards but shrugged her shoulders and followed after Naruto, as she really didn't want to get lost in a village. The last time she got lost in a village, she ended up destroying a portion of it out of frustration with her Zanpakuto, until she was kicked out of the village. Naruto, as he was walking, noticed everyone looking at him. Women were blushing and pointing, and men were glaring at him as they saw their wives and girlfriends look at him in lust. Yondaime-sama has returned. He's back for redemption against us. Our hero is back. Wow, he's so handsome. I wonder if he'll have my children. Naruto groaned at the last comment. It's like everywhere else I go. Hokage Tower. Tsunade Senju was currently sat behind her desk going through reports on sighting of Akatsuki in Fire Country lately, and she had a pretty good idea why they were here. Over the years she hadn't changed one bit, she was still the short-tempered woman that would fall asleep and get drunk, however it was less and less as the years went on. She was woken from her thoughts as she heard a knock at the door. Now though she was confused, there were no teams out, no missions ready, so the only possibility must be. Come in, she said with a little hope. Stepping thought the door what was some people may call a god among men, Tsunade had to hold back a drool and control her emotions. It was then she recognized the man, blowing all of her dreams and fantasies out of the water. Naruto, she asked carefully. Naruto chuckled and stepped forward. Yep, it's me. I'm back for as long as you need me. He said with a soft smile as Tsunade's eyes widened to massive saucers. Tsunade had practically dove over the desk as she hugged the blonde to her, and what she found was a strong muscled male, taller than her, and she loved every minute of it. Naruto placed his arms around the woman, hugging her just as tight, enjoying the feeling of being with Tsunade again. He was interrupted when he heard sniffing. Looking down, he noticed Tsunade had a couple tears down her eyes. Wiping them away with his thumb as he held her cheek, he asked, "What's wrong?" "I'm sorry, so sorry for banishing you," she said softly as she held on to him tighter. Naruto grinned as he stepped back while wiping the tears away. "It wasn't your fault, and besides I think it was for the best," he said, making her feel a little better as she pulled back. Then she noticed the red-headed woman. The room just got chilly and Naruto couldn't help but gulp. "I take it you're Kagura?" Tsunade asked with narrowed eyes. "The one and only," Kagura said while doing a dramatic bow. She smirked and walked up behind Naruto, hugging him. "I'm one of Naruto's lovers and future wife," she said, making Tsunade's eyes widen as she realized what she said. "One of Naruto's lovers?" she asked in shock. Naruto chuckled and waved a hand, trying to defuse the situation. "Well, I need to restart my clan, and as you know I'm able to have multiple wives to rebuild it. But we'll talk about that later anyway," he said calmly. Tsunade then went around her desk as Naruto and Kagura pulled chairs up to the desk and sat down. They looked just like Minato and Kushina, must be in the blood to like redheads, she thought to herself with a fond smile. "So when will I meet with the council then?" Naruto asked. Tsunade chuckled and looked down at her watch. "Actually, not long from now, we'll most likely need you to be tested against various shinobi just so everyone knows what you're capable of," she explained while getting a nod from the boy. That was when Shizune entered the office with some more paperwork. "Tsunade-sama, I brought you the rest of the paperwork you need to fill out," she started to say, but then stopped and dropped the papers on the ground when she saw the Yondaime's clones talking to Tsunade. Her eyes were the size of dinner plates and her jaw hung from her mouth. "Why Yondaime-sama? Why you're alive," she stammers, looking at the blonde-haired Adonis. Naruto and Tsunade blink and look her stumped form until he spoke up. "Hey Shizune-chan, I see you're doing well," he said while she blinks. "And Naruto?" she asks, getting a nod in return. "Oh my Kami, Naruto," she cried out and glomped the blonde while crying her eyes, causing Naruto to smile sadly before hugging her back. Naruto released Shizune and stepped back so she could see Kagura. "Shizune-chan, this is Kagura Ankai. Kagura, this is Shizune-chan," he introduced while each eyed each other up. "Hey," Kagura said with a slight wave. "Hi," Shizune said with suspicion. "It's nice to see you after so long, Shizune-chan, you're looking beautiful today," he says, making her look up and blush. Thank you, you look handsome too, Naruto-kun," she stated with a fond smile. Before anyone else can speak, another voice spoke up. "Well, would you look at this? You're here for only a few hours and already making woman blush." The three turned to see Jiraiya leaning against the wall, grinning at the sight. "It's better than getting the shit kicked out of me like you do a lot," Naruto said, chuckling while Jiraiya grumbled about blonde brats. "So this is the pervert you told me about?" Kagura asked Naruto while pointing a thumb at Jiraiya, who looked shocked. "Yep, this is him," Naruto said with a sigh, knowing what was coming next. "I'm not a pervert," Jiraiya said, sounding indignant. "I'm a super pervert," He yelled only to get drop-kicked by Tsunade with a twitch in her eyebrow before sitting back down, leaving the twitching sage on the ground while Kagura chuckled and Shizune looked ashamed. Tsunade also chuckled and leant forward. So tell me, what have you been up to all these years? Later. With Naruto. Training Ground 7. Naruto was sat down in the middle of a field in a meditative pose, legs crossed, eyes closed, and Ryujin Jaka laid flat along his legs while he held it with both of his hands. We will start your Bankai training once the Orochimaru invasion is settled down. We must not allow any interruptions. I know, but it may be easier said than done. There's not many places that won't attract attention. What about that forest no one is allowed to enter? Ah, the Forbidden Forest. All I need to do is make sure Anko doesn't interfere, which may be easier said than done. Hell, she will most likely want to join in. As long as we get the training done, then there is no problem whatsoever. You should get going to the meeting. I doubt they will wait any longer. Right. Naruto's eyes snapped open as he came back to the normal realm before blinking, getting his sight back to normal. Standing up, he sheathed his Zanpakuto and took out a book from his pouch with the title, Loveless, on the front. Opening it up, he read a line out of it. When the war of the beasts brings about the world's end, the goddess descends from the sky. Wings of light and dark spread afar. She guides us to bliss, her gift everlasting. I gotta admit, I'm good at my work. He thought with a chuckle as he went to the council chambers. Just like Tsunade said, everyone was in the meeting within the hour, having got the notice that Naruto was back and willing to work with the village once more. They were only glad that Naruto didn't hate the village enough to work with Orochimaru. Even they knew they wouldn't win, it would be the Kyuubi attack all over again. Just then the doors opened up to reveal Tsunade and what they could only describe the Yondaime reborn and what looked like a younger Kushina Uzumaki. Once the three seat down, Tsunade started things off. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze has returned to help us. He has also brought his partner Kagura Ankai, and you probably know her as Shujuhi Kiho. She said, causing gasps of surprise and shock while Kagura chuckled and grinned, reminding everyone of Anko. So that's the Rinnegan. Looks intense just from looking at them. Sum thought while feeling a shiver run down her spine. Now that the demon brat is back, I can finally make him my weapon. Danzo thought with sadistic glee. And that bitch will be used for breeding stock. With the both them we may actually come through this better than we expected. Shikaku thought with some enthusiasm. Tsunade, who also enjoyed their wide-eyed looks and stammering, decided to get back on the issue and looked at Naruto. Naruto, do you know why we had asked you to return to Konoha? She said professionally. Naruto sighed and gave a nod. Yep, Orochimaru's finally making a move at Konoha. Honestly, I was wondering when it would happen. He spoke, making the council tense, knowing they had fucked up. Tsunade, knowing this will start the meeting properly, also knew then still have to sort out Naruto's role in this. Before we get started, we should discuss Naruto's contract of employment. Very well, Inoichi said with a nod. So will you be reinstated as a Konoha shinobi? Hiyashi asked with his usual stoic look plastered on his face. Naruto, however, shook his head. No, I still don't trust this village. He said, making them look down. While I may trust my friends and certain other people, there are sides of the village that are too corrupt for me to just bounce back in. For now I'll just be a mercenary. Nodding his head, Shikaku spoke up. And what are your terms? Naruto just shrugged. Honestly, normal pays for whatever missions I do. I get the feeling I'll be sticking around while Orochimaru and Akatsuki is still out there, but basically just as if I was still a shinobi. Also, I will only follow orders from Tsunade, no one else. That's fair, Choza said with a smile. What about your partner, Kagura Ankai? Danzo asked with greed in his eyes while she felt sickened about thinking of what plans he had for her. Naruto narrowed his eyes and wrapped an arm around her. She will always work with me unless I say so. I don't trust anyone in the village when it involves her, especially people like you. We'll accept those terms as long as the majority are fine with it. Tsunade said while the clan heads gave a nod. Very well, as of now, you are a mercenary employed by Konohagakure. But what do you mean, Akatsuki? Shibi asked. He's probably already attracted them to us now. Danzo accused. Listen, you old fossil. Naruto growled at him. Akatsuki are going to attack here whether you like it or not. it's only a matter of time. If they can't find me, they would eventually attack the place where they know I have some of friends. Naruto couldn't help but feel anger run through his veins just by looking at the old cripple now that he knew everything he had done, well, almost everything. What he did know was that he was to blame for what happened between Konan, Yahiko and Nagato, and if it wasn't for him Nagato would never have joined Akatsuki. And that will draw you out in the open. Sume said since she knew what it was like wanting to protect your pack. Yes, Naruto said with a nod. Akatsuki don't care who they kill. If they know by attacking Konoha will drive me out, then they will make sure they do as much damage as possible, and we all know that there is no way to stop them from breaching a village if they want to, take Gaara's kidnapping for instance. He said, causing them to remember that despite all of Tsunagaku's security and knowledge of Akatsuki, they still found their way into the village easily without anyone knowing until the last moment. Very well, Hiyashi said, acknowledging what he said, knowing it to be right. What do you know of Orochimaru's plans? Tsunade asked Naruto. Not a lot, Naruto said with a sigh. But I do know he has a large force as well as Kabuto, his right-hand man, and Sasuke Uchiha. He said with a growl at the Uchiha's name. We can take this opportunity to get the Uchiha back. Koharu said with a smirk. Naruto stared at them in disbelief as if not believing what was said. There is going to be an attack by Orochimaru, and you're thinking about getting the Uchiha back. What the fuck is wrong with you people? You would just let people die in order to get your precious Sharingan back. The Sharingan is invaluable, Homura said with a stern gaze. Naruto laughed outright at that. That is fucking rich, isn't it? How long have you all gone on with no Sharingan? And yet this village is still standing. It's power-hungry people like you that end up destroying the village. He gazed before his eyes hardened into resolve. I promise you, when I met the Uchiha, his head is mine and anyone who gets in my way. He trailed off as he held out his hand to a wall, confusing people, until the entire wall was blown away. That will happen to you, he said, directing his gaze at the three elders, but more precisely Danzo, when he felt something coming from his concealed eye. Why is chakra circulating to that socket, unless it's not as useless as he wants people to think? Oh, I got my eyes on you, bastard. Understood. But what we need to do now is to test you in your abilities to see what you can actually and give the shinobi of the village an insight as to what you can do if they work with you. Tsunade said. Very well, where and when? Chunin Exam Stadium, it will allow anyone to watch and gives the best room to fight, and how about in 2 hours while I inform everyone of what's going to happen? Tsunade said while getting a nod. Well, that's all for now, dismissed. Tsunade said while everyone gave a nod and left. And Naruto, she said, getting his attention. Do your best, don't hold back. Later, with Naruto and Kagura, Naruto was walking down the main street on his way to the training ground. Seeing as they didn't have much time left, Kagura was holding his hand while leaning on him, making all people around them jealous at what they each have. Naruto looked at Kagura and smiled at how peaceful she looked. You know, for someone who has a high amount of bloodlust in a battle, you sure are a softie. He said with a chuckle as she slapped him on the chest lightly. All thanks to you, I've never felt at such peace before. I was always on the run before, having to kill to survive. I just got used to it, and then I received my Zanpakuto. It made me become accustomed to killing, and sometime I enjoyed it. She said, a little sad at the end. Naruto chuckled at her confession. Sometimes when I use the Kyuubi's chakra, I enjoy killing, although it's when I kill people like bandits, rapists and murderers. You shouldn't feel bad about it, for all you know, someone is alive because of you. Kagura smiled at Naruto's attempt to cheer up. Thanks Narukoi, what are you going to do about Sasuke in the invasion? Naruto chuckled evilly. There's nothing to do except for the fact that I have to kill him. If he ever got Itachi's eyes, God knows what he will be able to do. He would be the next Madara Uchiha, only more insane. Kagura smiled into his arm as they walked closer to the training ground. You better not lose by underestimating him, or you and my side will get very comfortable. She threatened. Naruto chuckled nervously at that threat. You know I won't lose, especially to him. He said with a smirk. Do you know who you will be fighting now? She asked since she didn't know anyone. Well, for taijutsu it will most likely be Maeda Guy since he's the best in Konoha. Genjutsu will be Kurenai. I doubt anyone's as good as she is. Ninjutsu will most likely be Kakashi. I'll show him exactly what he missed out on, and Kenjutsu could be Yugao Azuki or Genma Shiranui. You're not worried? She said, more of a statement than anything. Not really. I'm confident in my skills, and besides, they know what I'm capable of from the bingo books. He said before they went to go start the test. Chunin Exam Stadium. When Naruto and Kagura got to the stadium, they noticed everyone was there. Genin, Chunin, Jonin, Anbu, and even some civilians along with the clan heads. Apparently the news about Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze being the Rakudo Sennin heir had circulated throughout the village. Now they wanted to see the Rinnegan in action against some of the most powerful people in the village. Tsunade smiled seeing Naruto appear. Getting a nod from him to start, she stepped forward. We are here today to test Namikaze Naruto in Taijutsu, Genjutsu, Ninjutsu and Kenjutsu. Everyone cheered, making Naruto a little startled that people are excited to see him fight. Will Maeda Guy step forward please for the Taijutsu portion? Tsunade stepped back with the rest of crowd as Guy stepped up. Yosh. Naruto-kun, it will be fun to test your flames of youth. The green spandex wearing man yelled, making Naruto sweat drop along with everyone else. Naruto chuckled and said, it will be a blast going against you too. Giving the man a nod as sign to start. Naruto vs. Maeda Guy. Guy then turned serious and dashed forward at speeds many couldn't follow. Unfortunately for Guy, Naruto could follow. As Guy threw a punch at Naruto, he caught it effortlessly but noticed the power behind it as the wind and dust blew behind him from the force of the punch. Not bad, Guy, but you have to do better. Bringing his right leg up, he kicked Guy in the face, sending him sprawling back until he put his hands on the ground to flip himself up. Naruto shot forward at faster speed and threw a punch at Guy, who barely dodged it by moving his head but got a cut on his cheek. Guy repaid him in kind and grabbed Naruto's outstretched arm before pulling him down and kneeing him in the face. He then kicked Naruto up in the air, jumping up to hit Naruto. He never made it as Naruto regained his balance in midair and kicked Guy at the top of his head, sending him back down. Guy hit the floor hard but was back on his feet within seconds. In the air, Naruto was coming down fast. Guy jumped out of the way barely before Naruto punched the ground, causing a massive crater to appear while a tremor struck the area. Guy, taking the smart idea, jumped back a good distance. That strength, it was just like Tsunade-sama, however that was all him, no chakra whatsoever. Stands. Holy shit! Exclaimed Kiba. How in the world did he do that? Half exclaimed, asked Tsunade. That was similar to my strength, only I need chakra added to do something like that. Kagura stepped up grinning. Naruto has trained his muscles for the past 4 years by using weights all the time. What you're seeing is just the beginning. It's like my Sage Mode strength. Jiraiya commented as he hadn't seen what Naruto is truly capable of. This is amazing, exclaimed Shizune as she hadn't seen anyone use strength and keep up with Guy even with his weights on. I take it this is just the beginning. Tenten said sarcastically. Yosh. Naruto-kun's flames of youth shine brighter than ever. Yelled Lee, causing Neji and Tenten to sigh at his antics. I don't think I've seen anyone match Guy before. Commented Kurenai. This is just starting, Kurenai. I get the feeling they haven't even broke a sweat. Said Kakashi as he had put his book away for now. Fight. Naruto looked up at Guy, who had an unusual serious face on him, and to Naruto he just couldn't imagine this guy screaming about youth, or the like. Guy, you're going to have to take your weights off if you want to beat me. It seems you are right. Guy responded. He had only taken weights off out of respect for an opponent worthy of it. Taking the weight from around his wrists and ankles, he threw them to the side, causing an earthquake. You should remove yours as well, Naruto-kun, said Guy as he wanted to fight at full power. Naruto gave a nod before he took off his trench coat and his shirt. He then threw them over to the side, causing a crater appear while a tremor shook the ground, causing everyone's eyes to bug out. What were these people? Now Naruto stood topless with the necklaces around his neck. All the girls drooled at his ripped muscles, which kept flexing as he moved. Hell, even Tsunade drooled a bit. Both fighters vanished from everyone's sights, only reappearing when they either hit each other or dodged. Every now and again craters would form on the floor. Small craters, but hell, they're making craters by punching each other. That's saying something. Whenever their punches connected with one another, everyone could feel the force coming from them, as they would get hit with wind ever so slightly. They were alerted when they heard a crash and saw Naruto picking himself out of the wall of the stadium. I got to hand it to you, guy. You really are worthy of being called a taijutsu expert. Crossing his arms in an X formation, he started pumping chakra through his body, making glyphs appear all over his body, glowing bright blue. Stands. Ooh, this is gonna get good, said Jiraiya, recognizing what Naruto was doing. What's he doing? Asked Tsunade, a little nervous and anxious. That's Yondaime-sama's gravity seal, isn't it? Asked Kakashi, making many go wide-eyed. Yep, that's what helped Minato become the Konoha no Kiroi Senko, Konoha's yellow flash. It was his first step towards the Hiraishin. Explained Jiraiya. Guy is going to have to release a couple of gates if he wants to remotely win, said Kakashi. Fight. Gravity seal. Release. As soon as Naruto said that the glyphs his body pulsed before vanishing, everyone felt the sudden chakra hitting them softly and oddly calming. Before anyone could even blink, Guy was sent soaring through the stadium wall. Everyone looked back to see Naruto in the exact same spot. Not even the dust had moved, a true testament on his newfound speed. Everyone, just by looking at Naruto, could feel the power oozing off of him. Before anyone could say a word, though, there was a sudden blast of chakra and the rubble that were around Guy were blown off. Hachim and Kaiman. Kai. Hachim and Kuman. Kai. Naruto looked in the dust cloud that had picked up when Guy opened the two gates, when all of a sudden a blur appeared soaring at him. Lifting his arm to block a kick, he felt the strain on his arm as the kick held a lot of power. Guy then kicked Naruto with his other leg, sending him flying up. Naruto, not expecting it, didn't have time to block, the same going for the knee to the chin while he was still in the air. Guy then started kicking Naruto all over the place, much like Lee did against Gaara in the Chunin exams. However, as Guy went for another punch, his arm was grabbed. Looking up, he saw the smirking face of Naruto before he was punched back into the ground, making a crater. Naruto then fell back to the ground and flipped to land on his feet in a crouch, waiting for Guy to resurface. Guy eventually stood back up, but in a relaxed pose, and smiled at Naruto. You have certainly improved, Naruto-kun. Let's finish this with more attack, he said with cheerful yet serious manner. Ready when you are. Naruto returned, crouching down slightly. The next second, the both shot off towards each at inhuman speeds. As Naruto came close, Guy threw a punch aimed at his head, only for Naruto twist under it and punch Guy in the gut with tremendous power. Ikatsu. A second later, Guy spat globs of blood out of his mouth before he blasted back against the stadium walls, creating a large indent of his body before collapsing down to the ground in a heap. Tsunade appeared by Guy and ran a diagnostic jutsu over him and was relieved to find out he was okay, just knocked out. A punch like that would have split a person in half, and yet I could tell he wasn't using all of his strength for that. Standing up, she turned to Naruto, who had a serious face on him. Winner by knockout, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Stands. Holy shit, what was that? Kiba exclaimed. It's a special technique he uses for a quick kill. Kagura explained. That was more than quick, but why is Guy still alive then if it was a killing technique? Yugao asked, confused. Be thankful that Naruto was holding back, or the green spandex wearing Guy would have been split at the torso. Kagura said with a bloodthirsty grin, causing people to back away. To think he had advanced so far in such little time, he truly is a prodigy of his time. Hiyashi said with pride at his old friend's son. What's worse is that I doubt he would have improved this much if he had stayed within the village. Well, not since they'll want him at a certain level in case he snaps. Sum said with a scowl. Back with Naruto. People then saw all the cuts and scrapes on Naruto sizzle up before completely healing, astounding them as no one had saw someone heal that fast other than Tsunade. So who am I facing next then? Naruto asked as he watched medics go over to Guy to tend to his wounds. Tsunade stepped forward as Guy was carried off of the field. Will Kurenai Yuhi step forward please for the Genjutsu portion, and Anko Mitarashi for part Ninjutsu? She said with a smirk while Naruto grinned. Kurenai and Anko stepped forward and stood a few yards from Naruto, ready to get started at any second when Naruto spoke up. Let's see what you got, Kurenai-chan, Anko-chan. Naruto said with a smirk as he got ready. You look worn out from your batch with Guy there, Naruto-kun. Kurenai said with a small smile. Naruto looks over himself to see dirt and wipes it off. You don't have to worry about me, beautiful. Just worry about yourself. Same goes for you too, Anko-chan. he said with a smirk while they blush at being called beautiful. Oh, you're going down, Gaki. Anko said, taking a kunai out with Kurenai doing same before Anko shot forward at Naruto. Time for me to get some more of that delicious blood of yours. Naruto chuckled and pulled out his own kunai, only this was his Hiraishin kunai, which made Anko raise her eyebrows at. You have to cut me first. He exclaimed as he shot forward.